Relationships are the cornerstone of Constantia's success. They offer value collaboration and take great pride in creating and unlocking value for their partners and for each other, always with a personal touch. Today we are focusing on Constantia's Health and Life division, and I'm talking to Toska, Executive for Health and Life. Thanks for joining me, Toska. Maybe you can start off by sharing what the range of products are that falls under you, just to get everyone on the same page.
Hello, Rionette. Thanks for the opportunity. If I look, and I'm going to focus a bit on health, but if I look at the health range, we have gap cover, and I'm sure we're going to delve more into that in terms of what that is, primary care, and then we also have a evacuation product, which is it's in 18 African countries, and that's really for hospital or emergency evacuation. On the life side, we have a range of products ranging from funeral to credit life to your standard life type of products. But yes, I think we are focusing on health, so I'm going to stick to the three core, and also the biggest chunk of what I look after, which is the gap cover, primary care, and evacuation benefits.
Okay, I've heard the rumors, you've got a clear passion for your area, healthcare and insurance. So talk to us a bit about your experience in the healthcare sector and why you are so passionate.
Rionette, I think that's why I default to health. I had the privilege of really growing up in different aspects or areas in the health industry. Many moons ago, I started as a healthcare broker, and I had, for most of my life, I was a broker and an advisor and a consultant in the intermediary space, and doing healthcare work, consulting work to companies or corporates. I then, still in the intermediary space, moved from there to become a consultant to restricted medical schemes, some of the schemes that I looked after. I then moved into corporate wellness, and then also, and this is perhaps where more of the insurance came in other than health, in terms of disability assessments and looking at a different component of health. And I think that the context of, and I don't want to give too much away because it will give my age away, but the context of those years, the good old days, is really when healthcare was very different. It was before the Medical Schemes Act. Different companies were experience rated. They had different contributions for different benefits. You could be creative. We spoke to the Council for Medical Schemes about primary care for pensioners, and it was less regulated, but we could just do so much more. But by the same token, and then I think there was a very important part of my life that I was really very privileged to be part of and to lead the group or the consulting team that registered the Government Employees Medical Scheme. And I've learned a tremendous amount there. It was hard work, but it was one of those where I really enjoyed that. So looking at healthcare, looking at insurance, I often think that, and I think the past 18 months has taught us something. I think everybody became a bit more appreciative of their health in what we are going through and been through in the last 2 years. And yeah, I feel the same way about insurance that I feel about healthcare, and that is that you sort of don't appreciate it until you need it. And that's why I value and have respect for the role of the advisor, because they are there to create the need, to tell the client about the need, because what if, and it's not fear, it's a reality, sadly so. So yeah, that's health insurance, that's what it makes me tick.
I thoroughly enjoy the fact that you really started by being a broker, because you really, really understand the guys that have to sell the products that you offer. You've been there, been a consultant, you understand the situation better than anyone else. So that's really a fantastic background to have. You mentioned the conversations brokers have with clients, and we know, and I specifically, like you said, the last 18 months, I think have been more critical than ever. Um, why are products like GAP and primary healthcare so important, especially in South Africa?
Yeah, let me start with gap cover, perhaps. It's perhaps the easier one. And that is, you know, in South Africa, we really have world-class specialists in South Africa, in our healthcare system, in the private sector. And I think that results in quite a, you know, big supply and demand, and a sort of a shortage of specialists, but quite a demand for it. And medical schemes tariffs are not really a benchmark for the providers in terms of income. And we often find that a specialist charges more than the tariff. Mm-hmm. And that's in terms what the gap is. If we talk about gap cover, it covers the gap for hospital procedure between what the specialist charges and what the tariff of the medical scheme pays. But it has evolved. It gap cover now also covers certain procedures, certain cancer treatments, and so forth. So it's evolved with the times. But I do think that importantly that if you look at the Council for Medical Schemes report of last year, they list the 3 biggest out-of-pocket events or incidences for medical scheme members. And it's really anesthetists, surgical procedures, and hospitals. And really, if you think about it, when you go in for a procedure, you're not really going to negotiate price. No. So there's really a need for gap cover. If I look at the gap cover claim, something as simple and as normal as a childbirth, where our average claim is 10,000 Rand. And that means that you and I, for a normal childbirth, could typically be 10,000 Rand out of pocket. And it's a lot of money. Yes. So there's most definitely a need for gap cover, and we've seen that. The other component in terms of primary care is really, and I think we all know the numbers, Rianet. If we look at the household survey of 2019, I think, where it clearly states that in the general household in South Africa, when somebody falls ill, that 27% of the households in South Africa want private primary care. So there's a massive need for it. If you look at just the contribution difference between a medical scheme and a primary care product, it's not a medical scheme, but it's not intended to be a medical scheme. It is for the entry level. It is for the person that cannot afford a medical scheme, and that's why there's such a need. I mean, we've seen stats. South Africa said that less than 40% of your formally employed people belong to a medical scheme. So what do the others do? I can speak for forever, but yes, so there certainly is a need. Just the fact that there are 23, 24 exempted insurers at the moment on primary care with primary care products, and they look after 500,000 people. Great. Shows you that there's a need for it, you know. So certainly, I do believe South Africa, there is a need for both gap cover and primary care, and they cater for different segments of the market, but they both need it.
Just talk to me a little bit about the primary healthcare product. What does it typically cover, and what? I mean, you can't give me an exact premium, but what is the range that we're more or less talking about here?
So a primary care product, and it's you do get different levels of the product, but it's built around primary care. So it's built around doctor's visits, medication, even chronic medication. So it really provides comprehensive primary care. And then often you have an add-on that you can select hospital cover with that. And that hospital cover could be emergency cover or stabilization benefit or a specific stated benefit. And then you also have primary care products that offer specialist visits, or they do not offer specialist visits, or they offer optometry and dentistry at a basic level, or they do not offer that. So let's say it's primary care, then you've got dentistry, optometry, specialists, and then hospital. It's sort of those three tiers, but predominantly focusing on the primary care. And just to give you an indication, if you look at a family on primary care, then the premium is about 600 Rand for a family on primary care per month. If you look at a basic medical scheme, it is 2,500 Rand for that same family per month. So there's about a 1,900 Rand price difference. And I'm really talking ballpark, but that's what we're looking at. And that's a lot of money. Yeah. It's not the same benefits, naturally. Primary care and medical scheme cover do not offer the same benefits, but it's not intended to. That's why there's a 1,900 Rand price difference. Yeah. And that's really what we're looking at.
And is it also sold through brokers?
Oh, most definitely. Okay. And I am of the view that, and again, I can speak about this for a while, but I'm of the view that your role of your advisor and your broker is so much more and important in the primary care space. And if I can just expand on why I say that, as a medical scheme member, or as a person who has a gap cover perhaps, or as insuring your motor vehicle, when you have insurance, you typically know the system. You understand it. Because you've maybe changed your car insurance or your gap cover or your medical scheme, but you understand how a medical scheme works, and because you've been on it. In the primary care space, it's different. We are targeting the 85% of the population that do not have access to private healthcare.
And we're probably clueless about how it works and what it entails.
Absolutely. So firstly, you're targeting the population who's not familiar with the product. That's firstly the case. That's why you need an advisor. Okay. The thing is, then it's not only the fact that you target the population who hasn't had the benefit before, you're also targeting a population who cannot pay for advice. Yeah. But they must. And you're targeting a population, or a product, I should say, that with it comes complexity, because there are certain general practitioners or a network of doctors that you can go to. There's a formulary of medication that you can use. There's the doctor must be the gatekeeper. There are all the jargon of healthcare. Mm-hmm. Speaking to somebody who's never been on a medical aid or medical scheme, and you need to explain that to them. And that's why I'm of the view that this is the market where advice is so much more important, because it's a new product to them. They come from an uncovered place, and they need to be educated. And not just that, combined with the fact that the product is pretty complex, with a number of rules, and it needs to be explained to them.
I 100% agree with you. I often have conversations on short-term insurance in terms of the education, the important role of the broker in terms of education for a massive part of the population. Can you touch on the important part is commission for a primary healthcare product for a broker? Because obviously that's what it boils down to.
Yeah. Unfortunately, look, we're still on a journey with that. So if I go back in March 2021, so maybe I must take a few steps back. Primary care products are part of what we call the demarcation exemption framework. Right. So they're exempted products. And I can, if you're interested, I can go into the detail. And so please feel free to ask around that if it requires any explanation, if you think. But the gist of that is that these products were in the past or are in the grey area where they're seen as doing the business of a medical scheme. And therefore, they need to be duly registered. They're registered with the FSCA and they're registered with the Council for Medical Schemes. The Council for Medical Schemes impose what's called an exemption period for these products, and there are certain criteria and exemption qualifications that they need to comply by. And currently, there's a whole process and journey to look for a low-cost benefit option in the industry, and so there's a lot happening. So I'm really just focusing on the broker commission. The intention and the initial circular that was issued by the Council for Medical Schemes stated that primary care products broker commission need to be brought in line with the Medical Schemes Act. And that means that the 20% needs to change to 3%. Now, bearing in mind, you're talking about a much lower contribution, firstly. Secondly, it means in the world of the broker, that would have meant, and unfortunately it would have, but that would have meant that the average broker on a medical scheme member is 80 Rand, depending on, we take in our middle of the range option. So 80 Rand per member, and that needs to change then to 80 Rand on the primary care product, and that needs to change to 18 Rand, 18. So broker commission, as at that time, at the initial proposal, for the broker, considering, now remember, I've just explained that more work is required in this market, would have changed from 80 Rand to 18 Rand. And when that was issued, that was supposed to be March 2021, and that change was supposed to come into effect. And you can understand there was quite an outcry.
Yeah.
And even from ourselves, in that, it just didn't make sense. And then there was a circular issued in April. What's happening is insurers need to demonstrate how broker commission can be reduced in order to reduce non-healthcare expenses. So, and we have to submit proposals by the end of December. And it's not just a proposal of saying we're going to reduce it from 20% to 15% and so forth. I think most of the insurers are looking at proposals to either state why it shouldn't be done, or how we can compensate for that, or is there another way around it than a cut? And that's what we're looking at the moment. I do believe we will find a solution. I think we can be creative, but I do know that insurers like ourselves need the broker fraternity to get that message out, to communicate to this market, to educate this market. And really, who's going to get out of bed for 18 Rand to do that? So exactly. So I hope sanity will prevail, and I trust it will. I'm an eternal optimist.
Back to gap cover. Have you seen an increase in the interest and take-up of gap cover, specifically where people were really in difficult situations the last 18 months? Have you seen more interest?
We have seen more interest in health overall. I think it's been more front of mind. And I think what we've seen the last 18 months is everybody has been affected by health. And I think so it's more front of mind. So we have seen a greater stickiness in gap cover and in primary care in terms of, it was the last 18 months is also, with what we've seen with the retrenchments and what we've seen with the pressure, economic pressures, we members cut where they could, and all of us looked at our expenses and see where could we cut, what can we do. I did see that there was a greater stickiness in healthcare.
Okay.
And I believe it's because of the front of mind. It is with it comes a realization of exactly how important healthcare is, and which comes back to right in the beginning, you only realize the value of it when you need it.
Yeah.
And I think it's become closer to home for all of us.
This was a fantastic conversation. I thoroughly enjoyed it, Toska. Lastly, just a message to FA News readers, viewers, our audience, which is your audience.
Yeah, and here wasn't really, if I think of, I grew up in the intermediary space and in the advisor space, and I'm a FBI member and so forth. And, I think if there is one thing that people underestimate is the value of an advisor. It is really such a key role. The role of the advisor is just so key. And we're in a minefield. We're in a minefield of healthcare. You look at even a medical scheme. You open a medical scheme brochure. You open an insurance brochure. You open a gap cover brochure. It's not just one. It's not just one option. It's 20 options. You cannot navigate that minefield without an advisor. And that's my key message: is continue to do what you do.
Yes, that was a good message. Thank you, Toska. I thoroughly enjoyed our conversation, and looking forward to read and hear more about the developments and all the grey areas that we still need to figure out. So yes, maybe we should touch base again at some point to carry on with our conversation.
Thank you, Rionette, with pleasure, and thank you. Yes.
Okay, bye.